This student is someone who I've admired for the last 25 years. Abdul Rauf Nasir is a leader, a visionary, who we're very proud to call a Bayan Claremont Islamic Studies and Leadership Master's graduate. Please welcome warmly my brother, Abdul Rauf Nasir. So he gets not just the bookends, but he gets a stall. You can stand. He gets a standing ovation. This is what you could have gotten had you finished your.
I'll get two next year.
All right, so we're going to start with the certificate here. All right, hold on, and also I get to steal you or stole you. All right, and then of course you get the bookends,
Okay.
but I'll let you carry those on your own.
Okay. Inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. To our honored guests, I jotted down some notes also because I knew, and I made more notes than I'm able to really deliver in the time that we have. So you're going to have to allow me to edit it as I go along. But I was asked.
You got all the time you need.
I was
You're
asked.
it. You're the graduate.
I was asked to share some of my reflections about my time here at Bayan, and so I started by trying to think of a word that might help to encapsulate one word that, and actually our president, he actually gave the word that I have written down here. We didn't coordinate, but I couldn't find one word that actually could say it all. But the word that I chose that was closest to it was rich, R-I-C-H, and he mentioned several times enrichment, and so that's the sense that came to me, because this experience at Bayan has been a very, very enriching experience. It's very rich, and it was rich for a lot of reasons, and the first, I think, is the skill and the excellence of the professors all the classes that I took. They were very, very excellent, and I'm not saying that they already gave me the grade, so I don't have to. I wrote my thesis and everything, but it was actually I was surprised that there was no drop off. I had 17 or 18 classes, maybe 14 different professors. I think Professor Koka, I had him for 3 classes, fortunately. So I didn't have a separate class for those, and the excellence of the professors. They had such a great mastery of the syllabus and the text that we were being presented. They presented it with enthusiasm. They presented it with the excitement, and they were able to transfer that, in my opinion, to the students. They did that to me, and I'm sure they did that to the other professors. To other students also. And they were, through their excellence of their skill in teaching, they were able to create a kind of synergy between the text, the students, and themselves that allowed learning to happen in a very, very beautiful way. And so that was the first thing that was so enriching to me. There was no drop off. You expected to have out of 14 professors, one to be average. But I can say honestly, without any hype, that they were all on a very high level, and I really appreciate that. And it was a very rich experience knowing that. The other rich thing about it was the variety of courses that was already mentioned that we were able to engage in. I don't know if I wrote it down. Let's see. Most of those courses, some of them were required courses for the masters in Islamic leadership. Of course, the traditional courses that any Islamic school would have, parts of Islamic history, public presentation of Islam, Islamic theology and philosophy, religious leadership, Quranic composition and collection, Islam in America, that wouldn't be in all over the world, but here in America, Islamic law and legal theory, of course, the Arabic language, as well as some elective courses that I chose myself. And one of the very important classes really was an Islamic class for me, was the writing class. Without that writing class, I would have been less able to move through the process. I really, really appreciate that class. So the writing workshop was very important. Post-colonialism was Islam and mysticism was another elective I took. Community organizing was very, very important. Religion and poverty, trust. And I was honored to be in that first Sunni and Shia relationship class. That was very, very, very rewarding. And Islam in America. All these classes went to form the basis of what I studied here and what I got so much from. The other important thing were the students themselves. Most of the classes had a big variety of students. They were international. There were many international students. There were different ethnicities in the class. In many classes, there were different faith traditions in the class that increased the richness of the dialogue that happened in the class, and I think was a very, very important factor in making this the enriching experience that we identified. Another thing that struck me were not just the in-class experience, was the out-of-class experience, because we made several visits, and the ones that really, really made an impression on me, we had one visit to a meeting with the Chief of Police of Los Angeles, Charlie Beck, in which Charlie Beck shared with us, and we had dialogue with him about their efforts to form and improve the relationship with the Islamic communities in Southern California. And they in some respects, they're leaders in this kind of dialogue between, there's still problems, of course, but he was there along with his top staff. All his top lieutenants were there. And they shared their efforts to reestablish, to form a new kind of relationship with the African American and Hispanic community also. And this was about a year ago when, of course, the issues of police and young men, particularly in these communities, was very, very, very volatile. And so that was a very, very important meeting that happened off campus. Another important encounter, we went to the Museum of Tolerance, and we had a very fruitful dialogue with the leading rabbis there. And our focus of that meeting was we wanted them to share with us what the Jewish community did, because they suffered the same kind of hostilities for over a century in America. What was it that they did to achieve the inclusion that they seem to have now at this time? And so they shared their ideas about history and this and that, of that experiences for them, and they also dialogued with us what they suggested might be a way, some areas that the Islamic community could proceed and perhaps achieve that inclusion that we don't really have now in the future. So that was a very important visit that made a great impression on me. Another visit we made was to Homeboys Industries. Homeboys Industries is probably the leading reentry program for ex-gang members and also formerly incarcerated persons. And they've established an economic basis, a series of businesses and housing programs, so on and so forth, that help these young men, mostly young men, but also young women, to re-enter society without the stigma of their previous gang affiliation or their previous incarceration history. And then I can name many more, but the last one I'll name right now, we visited Bayan Claremont, we visit Isla. Yeah, right. We 3 or 4 times a week. But we visit Isla Academy, which is a new Islamic school that was established in South Central on Slauson Boulevard, and it was created by a Bayan graduate who was a master's student. Now he's a PhD student now, Imam Jihad Safir, and their project to build that institution up, as well as to redesign a masjid in that area. So those were some very, very important out of classroom experiences that helped to enrich this Bayan experience. Our sister here asked me, why I, came to Bayan. And another question is why I came back to school in the first place after being out of academic school for 35 years. I got my BA degree from the University of California in 1979. So I hadn't been in an American academic setting of this sort since then. So there was, a few motivating factors, well, many, but the ones that I can share with you now. There's a tradition that says, "Itlibul ilm min al mahad ila lahad." Translation is, "Seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave." This is a prophetic tradition that is reported that Muhammad had said, and that I'm not ready to go to the grave, inshallah, God willing, but I'm closer to it than I was in 1979. So that was one motivating factor. The other ones, I have 7 children. This is one of my sons right here, and 4 of them have BAs, and 3 are below that working their way up, and none of them have master's degrees. So I decided. I decided that I would put the challenge out, and I said, in my mind, I said, I'm going to be the first one to get the master's. So I began to look around for the possibilities. There's a very good program in Northern California at the GTU, Graduate Theological Union, which is on the north side of the Berkeley campus, and so I investigated that program, and it was an excellent program. It wasn't an Islamic school, but it had an excellent program from my investigation. But I came to Los Angeles, and I visited the Islam Academy, and the imam is a friend of mine. I was more friends with his father than him. His father is a retired imam. He's the imam, but he told me that he was in a master's program. And so he's the first one that gave me the interest in investigating Bayan. This is Imam Jihad Safir. And so I made some inquiries. I called down here, and then I talked with Murad Dabini, and he stoked the interest because he's the director of recruitment at the school. And he was so engaging. He came up to the Bay Area. He was on coming to another conference or something. We met. We had lunch. He was very, very, very gracious in explaining the programs, and that increased my interest. And I didn't really. I'm not sure at the time. I knew that the president was Imam Jihad Turk. I may have, but I didn't maybe associate the names because we hadn't been in contact like 25 years. So when I found out that, well, let me say one or two other things. I have to also give a special shout out to my advisor, Munir Sheikh, who shepherded me through the process, the academic process, and especially, and he was also on my committee. He was the head of the committee, my guidance committee for my thesis. He and Professor Mavani, yeah, and so they were very, very important to helping this experience to be, for me to be able to complete the experience. It was very enriching. But I've actually got something out of secret. I want to tell you one more story. We had a class, and the class, everything wasn't peaches and cream now. We had a class, and I found out the class was a 5-hour class. In my weak area, I said to myself, how I'm going to stay awake in a 5-hour class. So I was thinking about getting some dark glasses and spending and all that. But that's not the good part of the story. The good part of the story, in the first class, they were doing like a icebreaker. So they said, everybody stand up and say what was, something about yourself that nobody would know unless you told them. So I stood up and said, I'm Abdul Rauf, blah, 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 and I'm the oldest person in the class. I'm 66 years old. And they said, wow. And then Rabbi Zev stood up and said, you're not the oldest one in the class. He was a teaching assistant, and he also was a student. And so the class was about interreligious dialogue. And that told me, I didn't ask him, but I'm sure he also was operating out of a similar tradition from his faith that says, keep learning, keep going, keep going, keep going. He could probably recite it too. I don't know what it is. But that told me, and that reminded me of the closeness of our faith, which the class was about. I mean, the subject of the class was probably to bring us to that understanding. And so that was I had to say that. I told him I'd tell him when I talked about that. But going back to Imam Jihad, or Jihad Turk, this Jihad Turk. So we met in 1994, and he explained how our contact came about. But he didn't explain a couple other things. Maybe he forgot. I didn't forget. Well, actually, I did forget. Because you were on your way to Iran, or you were just come, or you were on your way to Iran. And that struck me because I had spent a couple of years in Sudan. So I always wanted to go to Iran or someplace like that was different than the Sunni world, right? So at time he was on his way to Iran. I spent 2 years at the Markaz al-Islami Afriki in Khartoum. He was 3 years old. He was 7. Well, I had 4 children at that time. Anyway. He was little, and it was an excellent program because they allowed me to take our family. I had 4 children at that time, so my wife was there, and they spent the first year there with me, but they ended the program. And they said, if you stay, we'll continue. But if you go home, we discontinue. So we had to go back because, I think she took something from her job, a sabbatical from her job or something. So we had to go back. We had planned to be there a year, but after we got there, we said, okay, can we go on? But we couldn't do it. And so I came back to America, and so I had to save up money because I wanted to go back. So I ended up going back. By myself this time for another year. And then, a couple years later, that's when I met Jihad. And so I'm wondering how, whether he had a, clairvoyance or inspiration from Allah or something, because he doesn't remember, he didn't mention it, maybe he remembers. He also, give me that book right there. I don't know if he remembers, he gave me this book. This is the Risala of Imam Shafi. And I recorded, I wrote in there, it was a gift from Imam Jihad. I'm wondering whether you were trying to recruit me back then. Because he gave me this book. And this book has been enriching to me. So just to kind of wrap this up, the experience at Bayan has been very great. The professors have all the areas of study were not unfamiliar to me, but they helped to deepen and broaden my understanding of those, especially the traditional Islamic areas, as well as those other areas that, and then were other areas that I was unaware of, that they introduced them in such a skillful way that they enrich themselves. Thank you, sir. He's telling me what I'm going to say now. But so they deserve, to me, they deserve a special salute. And I didn't mention the other professors' names, some of which I see here, and you all were very, very important to the process of helping me to raise my level of awareness, not only of Islam, but knowledge in general of the different faiths and the issues that have to do with faith communities improving the life in America and in the world. But I have to give a special shout out to my wife, because she tolerated me leaving, not being we live in Oakland. So I had to move down here and get an apartment. And so she tolerated me being away from the family for 2 years. And maybe she wanted me to leave, but I don't know. So she deserves special credit. He was reminding me to remind, right? And so I really have to give thanks to Allah first, our professors, the administrators, and the functionaries here at the school for making such a enriching program. And I considered this in a certain way my wife's birthday gift to me, because we graduated on the 24th, which is Tuesday. My birthday is the next day. So not only that, I'll be 68. So I'm going to catch up. Well, I don't want to catch up with you. I got you. But also, a week from today, we'll be celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary. So I got. So we thank you all, and inshallah, God willing, we are advertising Bayan where we go, hoping to inspire. I heard that, I'm not sure whether it's accurate, that the community in Atlanta sent a representative here. I was with one of the imams. We have a large community in Atlanta. We have a full-time high school there. It's not a college, but they have some very, very brilliant students who, after college, after their BAs, they become students here. And also there are some others in the area who are working on their BAs so that they can apply for Bayan Claremont. So inshallah, in the future, we'll grow. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, there it is.